Hello there again. Today I'm looking at the Easter morning reading from John 20, 1 through 18. This is one of those places in the lectionary where that reading comes up every year as an option. Typically, it is the text that many will choose to read. Why? We have two traditions concerning the resurrection. One is the empty tomb tradition, which appears early on to be separate, and appearances of various kinds of the resurrected Christ. In this reading, we have both. Not only do we have an appearance, we have records of multiple appearances. The text is also chosen often because of its poignancy, its emotion, and its detailed. Now, if you were to sit down with a Xerox copy of this and with a lot of margins and a number 2 lead pencil and try to figure out how many scenes does this reading concern. Well, it's pretty amazing. Some of them are very brief, a few Greek words, in fact. You could probably outline this into 8 or even 10 scenes. Read this through carefully, or even with that Xerox piece of paper, and film the whole of the product as a series of scenes. Where would you put the camera? Would you have a high platform? Would you have one of those wonderful drone cameras that you would follow the action with? And how close would you come to people's faces? And what kind of appearances would you make Jesus and Mary's encounter to be? All that wonderful stuff. It's complex, and it's also extraordinarily beautiful. A few factors concerning this text that I want to focus on is the wonderful literary mechanism of repetition. We have certain phrases that occur multiple times. They have taken him away. Why are you weeping? And in others. And if you read it through carefully, and if you would mark those on that Xerox sheet, you would see that they get this repetition that plants certain thematic notions into this vast variety of scenes. There are a lot of curiosities here. The whole matter of the Shroud of Turin has often been counterposed with the fact that what they see lying in the empty tomb are more like linen strips that are typical of the way corpses might be wrapped rather than a shroud. Another interesting detail is the toing and froing between the quote other disciple, and you're going to find that most commentaries are going to assume that that's the beloved disciple, the one who remains anonymous. And we get these odd things about them leaving jointly, and then we get a repetition of the word running, and then we have a second word of running in front of, almost taken from the Greek games. And there's this kind of toing and froing in which the beloved disciple, and that's an open question, is why does he get there first? What's going on? And that's another opening. He gets there first, but does not go in, giving way to Peter, who gets there second, but then Peter goes in, as if he has the privilege of examination. And then the whole idea that you have two witnesses of resurrection, which becomes almost like a legal statement. And then we have the way in which Mary is the beginning and middle and end. And the odd thing, of course, about this is, and in all of these empty tomb stories where women appear, the only consistent person in all 4 of the Gospels, including John, is Mary Magdalene. Why is Mary Magdalene given such prominence in this? Because she's almost like the emissary, like the mediary. While it's true that the 2 disciples, Peter and the other disciple, are distinguished by the fact that Peter goes away with the narrator not commenting at all upon Peter's response, but with response to the other disciple, it's so revealing that the narrator does this omniscient thing of going inside the mind of the other disciple and saying, he saw and believed. And so there's this revelation by sight, contrasted with the revelation to Mary Magdalene by voice. Now, if you were to do a kind of a word count, the heaviest detail, where the narrator really gives you a place where that camera we talked about would have to come in real close, is the encounter between Mary Magdalene and Jesus. This is filled with many, many openings where you are invited, by the way the story is told, places for a filling in. Peter and the other disciple do not see angels. Are they there? You can read the story both ways. They're there and they don't see them, but Mary Magdalene does. If they're not there, then we're saying that the Magdalene is actually double gifted. She gets to experience an angelophany and a Christophany over and above the men. And then that theme of weeping, here's another opening. That word is used extensively in Greek literature. And let me tell you, it has an incredible range of potential meaning. It can be just a fit of tears, silent tears. It can far more often be wailing, crying out. That's the word can actually mean, crying out. How is she weeping? What is the emotive quality of that weeping? It's left open. We have to imagine. Remember, the omniscient narrator could crawl inside her heart or mind or both and explain what it is that's prompting this weeping. This is something to think about. And then there's the holding. That word also can mean apprehending. Most would interpret it as touching, as grasping, as embracing. And she's ordered not to do that. It's for you to fill in what kind of holding is Jesus talking about. That word is actually used only once in all of the four Gospels concerning Jesus and a woman. And it's in Luke 7, verse 39. Look at it. It's the woman who bathes him with incense. And there the Pharisees say, this woman is a sinner. Why would he let her touch him? There are some connections between Luke and John that we cannot explain but by our most credible hypothesis of how these documents relate to each other. Because in Luke's account of this, we also have Peter running and looking in the tomb in a very disputed text as to whether or not that should be in there. And the Bible Society has agreed that it should be in there simply because it looks like there's a floating tradition of Peter running to the tomb. But the wording is identical in part with the John account. So also here, a woman touching Jesus in these intimate ways is in Luke and here in John. What does it mean? What's going on? What's really going on here? How can we explain this connection with Mary Magdalene? What is John saying that we have enormous affection being conveyed, both on the part of Mary Magdalene, but in more vivid and direct ways with the other disciple? What caused him to simply see the absence and believe? And what is Mary thinking when she says they have taken him? This is a long text. By the way, I hope you look at my other video that's being put up at the same time about our moral obligations as pastors in handling with great skill and interpretation the text around the arrest, trial, and death of Jesus. I'll look forward to talking to you next time.